Well, thank you for staying with us. You're watching AM Live on NTV. It's just about 48 minutes past 6 a.m. We're still looking at a couple of stories here within the paper. And on the Daily Nation, it's all about that protest we saw yesterday over the Chinese businesses, the Chinese square that is based in Juja here in Nairobi, and has created quite a lot of chaos. Abdullahi, I want to get your remarks on what really is happening here, because there seems to be quite a disquiet, because we have the Chinese trader who says, look, we've done everything, we've paid all the taxes, we've met all the obligations that we needed to meet to set up this business in Kenya. So where is the issue? Because the traders are saying you're coming to upset the market.
Well, I think first of all, that guy did not start operating yesterday, and Kenyans have not started. I haven't seen Kenyans complaining about buying products from his shops or retail. I will tell you that the Kenyan consumer is so much exploited everywhere in this country. We pay, as I told you last week here, what do our taxes do for us? We pay tax, but we still pay for everything else. We expected some of the things to be free. So, as my friend was just saying off the set, if the guys in Mutura yesterday, they were there, preparing the meat, who are the guys in the streets? So is there a political, mobilization to that effect to depict that the bills and everything is very high? So I think there is a lot of politics. Moses Kuria is trying to, and then this idea of making a problem sound a regional problem maybe, or a certain county's problem sound like a national problem. You cannot equate certain small issues to the country. I mean, Kenya is 55 million. So there are better ways to handle these things. And then the question people are asking is, if I drive my car and I go to the Chinese and I buy my stuff and I'm happy, who is the guy complaining? So the people doing business with our lives need to know that if a Chinese is legal in this country, we pay them 600 from the 1,000 we make. What is about buying some cheap commodities from them? So China is a very big country, big economy. So their production cost is very low. And then they have the facility in terms of...
this then drive, these other guys, they're the traders.
No, why don't they just buy from them? Why don't they buy from them and do business? Where are they getting the commodities from?
Yes,
it's not the business of the Kenyan consumer to take care of the selfish interest of our traders in Kenya. If globalization is going to drive anybody out of a business, so be it. What the Kenyan consumer wants is quality at affordable prices. And you have not seen a single consumer in the Kenyan streets doing demonstrations. I mean, who in his normal mind would go to the streets doing demonstration that, wait a minute, there's a Chinese man here selling the products I'm looking for at low prices. I've never come across anybody in the world complaining about low prices. And why would these people want to keep on exploiting Kenyans? Because you see, if the same product you're buying is 1,000 bob in the local market by the Gikomba fellas and 100 at the Chinese man, basic economics says that human beings are rational persons. So you'd go and buy a product, quality product, at an affordable price. Why would anybody complain about that?
All right, Arnold, I want to get your take on this.
I need to start from this particular point, that globalization is here, competition is around, whether it's from regional markets or even global ones. Now, Zainab, you know that 70% of the people who live in the rural areas are employed in agriculture. 40% of our population, anyone who's actually working, is employed in agriculture. Yet, as a country, when we were going to school, we were told agriculture is uti wa mgongo of our economy, right? Yet, we have exposed our agriculture to all manner of competition. There is literally nothing that is, if you're taking care of, if you're doing livestock, you will compete against other people. You are not sheltered or shouldered. No one will actually help you out. So, how we expose the core of our economy to competition, and then now we somehow want to protect a small niche of what contributes to the GDP. That's merchandising, right? So, agriculture, if sugarcane has gone down, our maize farmers always complain, we've not found ways because there's competition from COMESA, from EAC, from the global markets. So, we've spoken about exploitation so much, but have you seen any single consumer protection lobby group speak until now? That is how bad we are. that our members of parliament, who are our first line of defense, because they are doing representation, have not spoken. No consumer lobby group has actually spoken about this particular end.
But we do know that last week, you know, you had the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, who actually called for a meeting with the traders. And in fact, there's still another meeting that is coming up this week.
I'm talking about, you know, Rigathi Gachagua is the Deputy President. I'm talking about the consumer protection lobby groups that we have around here. None has spoken about that. So the issue of exploitation, you know, the Chinese square or China Square is being closed for bringing the cost of life down, the cost of living down. And then now the same administration that promised that they will bring the cost of living down is fighting the people who are bringing the cost of living down. But I need to actually bring up this.
Isn't that ironical?
I'll go back to that. But number one, we saw the anti-counterfeit agency going in there. How did these goods go through the ports all the way to KU, and now they are showing up? The current minister,
worth 50 million shillings.
Yes, the current CS for trade is actually on record, and you can find out he said that counterfeits are good for the economy. He's on record actually defending that.
We'll have
now,
to confirm that.
as in, how would people sitting at the anti-counterfeits agency show up today and then go to, and no one has complained, by the way, the consumers are not complaining. It is the competition that is actually complaining. So I think it's quite unfair that we Kenyans regard ourselves as very dynamic. We are all over the region doing work, doing trade, consulting, and doing everything. But then when other people come here, that is where we draw the line. I think we are also exposing our human capital that is elsewhere to dangers that will not really, we really cannot protect them against. So, and Zainab, there's something else that we are not looking at. If we are looking at the Chinese as competition, has China Square really offset the balance of trade? That small shop at Unicity, at Kenyatta University, has it really offset trade? And if you look at public sentiment, if we do away with China Square and the Chinese, there is still the other aspect we're not talking about. There is this Slim Mall coming up, and Garissa Lodge has always been there, and people have gone there. What is the reason? Why are people moving away from Luthuli? Why are people moving away from Nyamakima? Why are people moving away from Gikomba? There is a reason, and Kenyans are not here to shoulder market inefficiencies. How many traders are in Gikomba, for example? You probably have got 10 traders and 10,000 brokers. So why should we, as in, just because we live in Kenya, we are forced to pay taxes, or rather to shoulder a market inefficiency that is not our problem. That cannot be the business of government. And that the minister actually sits down and really wants to push this particular agenda. Where does he stand? Does he stand with us? He said that he asked another presenter who was asking him about business, and he asked him, are you anti-business? Are you a communist? It is time we also asked, is Moses Kuria a communist? Why is he against business?
All right.
Just
yes, we have to, yes. Yeah, then quick comments, then
yes, then I'm telling you what is happening in this country. In Isli, a t-shirt where you have inside for men is 500 shillings. The same one at Jamia Mall here is 2,500.
Well, allow me to...
So what I'm saying is this.
Yes.
If the consumer is going, like in Isli, people come from as far as Uganda and, you know, Tanzania and every part of Kenya, including Nyanza and Kisumu. If the consumer has decided to buy from there, like that
the consumer has the liberty to decide
wherever to buy from. So if you're in Kikomba and I decided to go to the Chinese guy, or I decided to go to Isli and do, like a suit in Isli is between 7,000 to 15,000. At the CBD, the same brand. Some people go to Isli and get those suits between 7,000 to 10,000. They sell at 25. So if you go to Isli and buy the one for 7,000 or 15,000, and another one buys for the one for 27, is a choice that the consumer is making. So why are traders rioting?
All right, let's hear from Dismas
very quickly. Yeah, competition is very good because it makes the consumer king. But I think also these traders and their demonstration, they raise a very germane issue. That why is the cost of production in China much lower than Kenya? So maybe Kenya Kwanza administration has got the huge opportunity to look at the cost of production in Kenya so that we can remain competitive. Because if we do not review the cost of production in Kenya, like for instance the cost of energy and associated costs, it means that Kenya may end up becoming one big shopping market, that you've got goods from China, from Turkey, from Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, flooding our markets, and then we don't get into any production. So we must review our, like for instance, there was a report yesterday talking about the cost of energy in Kenya, that compared to our neighbors, our costs are very high.
All right.
In my view, instead of trying to cast aspersions on international traders and investors who have come to Kenya, let's go to the root cost. Why is the cost of production in Kenya very high? Let's have an agile, robust tax philosophy so that we make Kenya a low-cost production facility in the region.
All right. We have to move forward. Okay.
Just allow me to say this.
Quickly, yes.
Do you know why there is smuggling of goods from Uganda to Kenya? Goods that essentially were at the port of Mombasa, crossed Nairobi, all the way doing about 15,000 kilometers, and still come to Nairobi and they are cheaper. Women will tell you that they buy handbags that have been brought in from Uganda, much cheaper and more quality. Why is it? It is because of this particular phenomenon that we are in a situation where people lie about taxes and there is proper exploitation of the clients. And there's we talk about a free market. Ours is not a free market. You just need to get to a place where you're asking for a material like the one you're putting on and you will be told this one is not there, this is what we have. And you have no option but to take it. So the exploitation in the market is the biggest problem we have, and government needs to address that.
Right.
The same way we have allowed agriculture, which employs the biggest number of people in this country, to face off against global competition. We cannot protect a little minority just because of political correctness. But this is the question I wanted to ask. If China Square was in another region, would we still have had the same noise? Why is it that for anyone else who's selling things affordably, we will blame them of money laundering? We will say they don't pay taxes even when there is no proof. Then we will bring in the anti-counterfeits. So what they are doing essentially here is that once you bring in KRA, you bring in the anti-counterfeit, and then all these reputational problems, is that then China Square will have to pay for reputation management, will have to deal with the anti-counterfeit, will have to deal with the extra cost that comes around with fighting with government agencies, and in the process the costs go up. So whom does it benefit?
All right.
Yeah.
Good question. Okay, so we're just going to finish up. Let me just see what else we have here, but we'll not be looking at that. Mobile labs to help sort out facility crisis in junior secondary. Each mobile laboratory will cost 200,000 and the school needs around 8 of them. So this is what the government hopes to do to be able to bridge that gap when it comes to the laboratory issues in the junior secondary schools. All right, moving forward, let me also, by the way, NSSF collects an extra 7 billion from enhanced retirement contribution. That's the National Social Security Fund, which projects its annual collection to increase by 7 billion following the newly enhanced contribution from workers and their employers. If you checked your paycheck this past month, you'll notice that that amount that was deducted was much higher than what has always been. On Business Daily, that's what we have on the front page. Regulator rejects payment of electricity bills in orders. That's the energy regulator, which has opened Kenya Power's plans to bill some electricity consumers in dollars amid concerns the utility will be compensated twice for exchange rate losses. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority yesterday maintained that Kenya Power is fully compensated for foreign exchange losses in current bills. Also, Deputy CBK boss nominee wants rates cap reinstated. MPs should bring back a low capping interest rates to bring down the cost of loans. The nominee for the post of Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, Susan Jemutai, has said, she says her vision is to put in place a functional and vibrant interbank forex market. Also, Tycoon Ndungu Gigiri asset faces auction as well as Kenyan talks to butter tea for Pakistani rice. Well, Kenya is actually pushing for barter trade on tea in exchange for rice imports from Pakistan in the country, which moves to cushion the top buyer of its beverage in the wake of serious economic woes in Islamabad, occasioned by a shortage of dollars. And finally, on Taifa Leo, mwezi mzima bila masomo. Ni mwezi mmoja tangu wanafunzi wajiunge na sekondari ya msingi, that is the junior secondary school. Wengi wao katika shule za umma wamekuwa wakihudhuria vipindi darasani bila kufunzwa. That's on full page of the Taifa Leo. That's on the second page of the same. Teachers saying, wanasema walimu walalama kuwa kinyume cha ahadi ya serikali, shule za umma hazina walimu na madarasa ya CBC. This is one of the biggest issues that continues to dog the education sector in the country, and especially on the junior secondary school level. A lot of gaps there. We're going to move forward from that because I want us to get into a conversation this morning, and it's all about the state of political parties. Now, like I said, on Monday we saw a couple of changes within the UDA party leadership. The former Kakamega Senator Cleophas Malala managed to get position there as the Secretary General of UDA. I'm just trying to get this. He was announced as the Secretary General following a decision by the UDA Party's National Executive Council, chaired by President William Ruto, who is the party leader. In the changes, former Machakos Senator Johnson Muthama was also replaced as the chairman, with Embu Governor Cecily Mbarire. All right, let's take a look at a report that was filed by Duncan Kayema on Monday to just set the base for a conversation.
The ruling UDA party has invaded its Kenya Kwanza partner ANC, snatching its fiery and controversial youthful member Cleophas Wahungu Malala, appointing him to the powerful party secretary general position following a meeting at State House that effected key changes in the UDA party leadership.
The National Executive Committee has appointed Honorable Cecil Mbarire, the governor of Embu, as the party chairperson, and in a further move to further strengthen the party, my position as a Secretary General will be taken over by Honorable Cleophas Malala.
Today, as I take over the position of Secretary General, I am alive of the fact that I am taking over a party that has a very strong foundation, a party that is seen as the youngest party, yet the biggest party in the Republic of Kenya.
A source within UDA party revealed to NTV that Monday's decision is aimed at accelerating the party's plan to spread its political tentacles into Western Kenya in order to topple ODM's reign in the region since 2007 and have Raila Odinga's grip confined to Nyanza.
We also have realized that this party requires the services of a full-time Secretary General, someone who will devote all his time and energy. We have new members that bring in new skills, different talent, and people that are well known for their ability to propel ideas into great dreams and realization of the dream that we have for the Republic of Kenya.
UDA has grabbed Malala from ANC after Musalia Mudavadi relinquished his party leader position to Lamu Governor Issa Timami. And with Malala now out of the party, it means ANC has no strong voice from Western, which might see the party easily drowned. The ruling parties intend to cast its vast shadow over the Mlembe nation became clear during December 2022 senatorial by-election in Bungoma, whereby it fielded Mwambu Mabonga to compete against Ford Kenya's Wafula Wakoli, a seat that was Ford Kenya's. But when asked whether UDA is engaging in political cannibalism of its coalition partners, it says,
Kule mbele tunataka tuhakikishe kwamba rais wetu amepanga siasa yake chini ya nguo moja. Hatutaki tuwe na confusion mingi as we get into 2027. Na hiyo inaenda kuwa one of our mandate kuhakikisha kwamba tumeongea na wale wenzetu tuanze kuunda timu moja nzito ambaye tunaenda kuhakikisha kura ikikuja mwaka wa 2027 we only have one color. One color to face our opponents because we only have one government. We cannot have one government and several colors.
The party has announced it will conduct elections towards end of the year once it concludes membership drive. Duncan Haemba, NTV.
All right, so that's the latest development from some of the key changes within the ranks of the UDA party. And the same goes to other parties. We just saw the other report that we aired earlier on with regard to the ODM party. So we're going to look at what the political structures within the parties really mean for democracy in this country. I'm going to begin with you, Dismas. So you've seen what UDA has done, and according to the Star, by the way, they are saying President William Ruto is forging an elaborate plan to build a behemoth political machine ahead of 2027 general election. Now, this folding and unfolding of political parties, already we know Kenya Kwanza is made up of a number of political parties. You have the UDA, you have Pamoja African Alliance, you have the Movement for Democracy and Alliance, you have Democratic Party, you have Chama cha Kazi Ford Kenya, ANC, you have Maendeleo Chapchap, Muungano, the Service Party. But when the ruling coalition is moving forward to, creating this big, giant, one political party, what does this mean for this, first of all, these other parties within the coalition? What does it mean for them?
Some time ago, Kenya was a single-party state, and I recall President Moi then at Kasarani said that he has listened to the views of the people. They reviewed the infamous Section 2A to make Kenya a multi-party state, and also the 2010 Constitution provides that Kenya is going to be a multi-party state. Therefore, it's incumbent on every single party leader in Kenya to go the extra mile and ensure that his party is attractive to Kenyans. Now, when you come up with a political party as a leader, as a vision bearer, you're supposed to make it attractive by getting more members. As soon as you get members, then you come up with very serious policy proposals captured in a manifesto. You present this manifesto to the voters, and then they'll give you power. So with Senator Malala now joining UDA as the Secretary General, it means that it's going to deliver a new talent to the political party. It therefore means that the other members of Kenya Kwanza have got an opportunity to do the same. So Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, Alfred Mutua, Amason Kingi, they should also work very hard to ensure that their political parties are strong. And we'll go back to Charles Darwin, survival for the fittest. So every political party in Kenya has to be fit, has to be very agile.
Look, in 2016, political parties broke up to form the Jubilee Party, and they was used, that was in 2016, yeah? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, a move that many regretted later on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then we're seeing almost the same thing happening right now. What difference will that make? Are we, can't we just read from exactly what happened within the Jubilee Party to see that perhaps this isn't the best idea?
Well, it will depend on the political party leaders. Like, for instance, under Jubilee, a number of the political party leaders indicated that they joined Jubilee and others joined Azimio la Umoja Kenya under duress, under coercion, that they did not move on their own motion. While on the other hand, Kenya Kwanza was a coalition of the willing. So if you are a party leader in Kenya today, what must occupy your mind always is how do you make your political party more agile, very strong, with a national-wide presence. So it's no different from running a business. You must market your political party. And what makes a party exciting for politicians like Mr. Arnold Maliba here is that if you join the political party, probability of securing electoral victory is extremely high. And that's what party leaders must do. They must ensure that their political parties are so strong that merely getting that ticket substantially increases your probability of winning. For instance, we know that there are some political parties in Kenya, like for instance, talking about ODM. In parts of Kenya, if you've got an ODM ticket, probability of winning is extremely high. In parts of Kenya, if you've got an ANC ticket, probability of winning is extremely high. In some parts of Kenya, if you've got a UDA ticket, probability of winning is extremely high. Therefore, it's incumbent on the party leaders to go the extra mile and make their political parties very agile. If they don't do that, then you'll have the bigger formations like ODM and the UDA swallowing them.
Let me get to you, Abdullahi. When we're looking at, the idea, the ideology behind the formation of political parties, it appears that every election cycle, the reason why we form political parties is just use it as a vehicle to get into office. And even with this form, part, like, what the Star is saying, that, this party is being formed ahead as to be a political machine to be used ahead of the 2027 election. What does it speak, when we're talking about the place of personalizing political parties and the ideology that we have, that support these political parties?
Well, ideally, political parties, are supposed to be boosted in democratic influence, performance, potential accountability, system, and those things. But now in Kenya, if you look at even in the history, from 1960, we had two parties, 63 to 64, we had these. Then we had 66 to 82, we had one party, 82 to 91. Then from 91, 92, we had 10, 23, 51. Parties in this country are first auctioned ethnic grouping, coupled and sold by those with money. Political parties in this country from 2002, let's not even go far. NAC came to power, what happened? 2013, URP and TNA joined. Jubilee today is just a dead animal that has no influence. It had influence for only 10 years. Look at Malala. Malala is from Kakamega. And then we have Edwin Sifuna, who is a senator in Nairobi, from also Kakamega. Bungoma. So these are both Luhya from Western Kenya. Now, why do you think Ruto is trying to strategize himself to give Malala the Secretary General? He is to lure in the Luhyas they have gained more in this government than the previous government. A couple of CSS, couple of PSS, the government throws positions here and there. The essence of having political parties in this country is just people ascending to power. Remove UDA from Ruto, it's as good as dead. Remove ODM from Raila, what is it going to do? Look at, combination. You remove Kalonzo Musyoka, where is the baseline? There is another party that has come up now. It's called UDM. It's owned by a former governor who is now the leader of the party. The secretary is from Siaya, who contested for deputy governor. So political parties in this country and even in Africa are not there to bolster or bring accountability or citizen participation. Look at political parties. Political parties exist during nominations and then during elections, and then they wait for another 5 years. You'll be hearing national convention centers here and there. But now you ask yourself, what is the role of the citizen in the participation of the political processes of political parties? It is the leader, William Ruto, Raila Odinga, Ford Kenya, Wetangula, all these guys. Without them, nothing much that the citizen has a role. Look at how they do elections. I was in the one of ODM, the black suit men in Kasarani. So political outfits, first of all, represent ethnic regional groupings. Because if you look at ODM, its main base is Nyanza. You look at UDA, it's central in Kenya because of Deputy President him.
So do you say political parties in this country lack a national ideology or national outlook? I
don't think even they were formed to even do those things. They were just formed to ascend to power and use it to reward. Look at even the nominations. Will you with certainty say that the processes of nomination is very fair? Some people were told to step down. Like there was a guy who was here last year, youth chairman for UDA. He was telling us that he was told to step down. Why will you tell people to step down? So it's more of an anointment by the political leaders, like we were talking about the other day, a report by Negotiated Democracy in Northern Kenya. Wewe utaenda wewe ndio utachukua. They look at maybe the numbers of your family, maybe it's a bit higher. Then most importantly, can you soil their hands? They are flown from Mandera, they are brought to Nairobi. These are relatively average people in the villages. They are put into hotels. In fact, some people are being abused and their emotions are intimidated. So that they succumb to the whims and the need of the political leader. ODM, you will not win a seat if Raila will not hold your hand. The current member of Senate for Mandera, Ali Roba, took a member of Marudile Ward in Mandera North and held his hand. He defeated the incumbent with 450 votes. Because that, where he holds his hand, comes with some cash at night. So if you have the financial muscle and you are the leader, you tell this guy. So the essence of having a political party is where the citizen can participate in the process, the political process of making decisions in the country, so that they have a fair outcome by judging our brothers and myself. Do these people have what it takes to deliver for this country? But that is not, it's the opposite.
All right. Arnold, so UDA party, you know, this grand plan to make it a monolithic party in the country, at what expense to the other parties within the coalition? And what does it speak of the structures within our political parties?
Whereas I agree that a lot of parties are actually formed as special purpose vehicles for the simple reason of actually sneaking into government, it's also not off the mark when it comes to why parties exist. Political parties are actually tried and tested tools for citizen participation and anchoring of democracy, but primarily political parties exist to capture power and administer state and impose their will on the masses. So when parties use all schemes, they are simply doing what they are supposed to be doing. But then because we have to organize as a team, we have to come together. That is a way that has actually been tried and tested. It's the easiest way to try and organize and get in. Kenyan political parties are relatively young. We've not nurtured them sufficiently. Of course, they are contributors to why they get there. So as I get to your question, probably we should look at this particular issue differently. We are talking about UDA here. But before we talk about UDA and how it's organizing, probably we look at Malala as an individual. Malala has actually is young and restless. He is part and parcel of the group of young people that are actually looking forward into the generational handover that is happening. He's not really been very, really a person who can actually wait behind the queue. So even on him taking up the SG's job, it's not so much of he's falling into the bigger and grand scheme that William Ruto is trying to put into place, but it's also about him as a person. He lost as governor. At that particular time, he was able to push and ensure that Kenya Kwanza did not have any other gubernatorial candidate. And of course, Halwale sat out, and then he took over that particular end. So for him, and then his deputy ended up being a PS. You know how difficult it is. You lose as governor, your deputy ends up being a PS, and you are not able to get in. You saw a list coming out the other day, and he was top of the list of guys, quote unquote, a leaked list of the chief administrative secretaries. He's shortlisted, and then all of a sudden he's showing up here. He's a man in a rush. So this also speaks about him, and just being an implement that falls into a bigger scheme. But where Jubilee, where UDA is headed is exactly where Jubilee was. An attempt at trying to consolidate other parties to fall in. And Malala here becomes a very good weapon because, as the Star has actually correctly put it, is that UDA really wants to ensure that they have got Western Kenya in their hand, because Ford Kenya and ANC have failed to actually stem that particular rise. Because if you look at how Western Kenya performed in the last election, of course, ODM and largely what we will call Azimio did much better. And then which party in the Kenya Kwanza performed much better? The leading party that performed better in Western Kenya in the last election was UDA. So UDA have got a stake, and they think if ANC cannot do it, and Kenya Kwanza can, as in ANC and Ford Kenya cannot do it, then we probably do it ourselves. Here is where then we get the bigger problem, because immediately Kenya Kwanza won, they've really worked on ensuring that they weaken the opposition. You've seen MPs from the opposition going to State House. They've actually sowed a lot of turmoil and disquiet in ODM. There's a civil war in the opposition. That they have done very well. But now, as the president runs out of goodies to give out, he's also thinking that probably a civil war at home can actually be good for him. So where are we now? The coming war in Kenya Kwanza has actually started in Western, because Mudavadi now is actually a civil servant. He's a public officer, right? Yeah. He might not be in a position to champion the ANC agenda as Mudavadi. Wetangula, of course, remains a public officer of rank in the National Assembly. He might not be out there doing the day-to-day running for Ford Kenya. Now, here you have got a Malala who is energetic, restless, and he has got the biggest party in his hand. Now, running and roaming around Western. You see, that in and of itself manages. I know people wouldn't want to actually look at it from that particular end, but then Malala comes in and he's primarily, and you saw him coming out. So he's saying that our partners should prepare to fold. He's in and his brief is very, very clear. So we are at a place where there's a civil war that is coming into Kenya Kwanza. This one is actually, of course, orchestrated by the president himself. He's run out of the goodies to give out people. See the people who are being shortlisted for CAS position, for example. Former governors, people whom you wouldn't expect them to come up for these small things. So that's why you pick guys like Malala, give them something else and try to balance out. I know he's juggling. He's not in a very good place. That goes down to how our political parties then fail, because what happens to the other parties? We still have got a case of Azimio parties. There's the Azimio party and then the partners. Parties that signed what they didn't read. They were at KICC and they were signing documents. Up to now, they still say they have never seen the whole document. Now, again, we are getting into another scenario where parties are now being told, okay, we have to form one big bus. I think the Jubilee experiment should teach UDA that that is not the way to go. And that even UDA in this particular government was only possible because political parties are, as in the freedom of people, the Article 38 rights that allow people to actually have parties and associate wherever they want. If we go back to what Jubilee did, I think it's not an experiment William Ruto wants on his hand. Even though it is good for him to keep busy in his homestead fighting so that he actually can also get time to become the president of the Republic of Kenya. Otherwise, they have turned him into the president of Kenya Kwanza. You see how they are going round and round and round. He needs to actually now rise above. And how does he do that? He ensures that at home people are busy.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We have to take a very quick break here on AM Live, but when we come back, I know you want to to respond to some of those remarks that Arnold has come up with. All right, so we're going to take a very short break, but we will be back and we'll continue with this conversation. I can see Franklin Mukwanja on that expert opinion on the Star saying the folding and unfolding of political parties has very little contribution to the democratic maturity and progressiveness. I want to hear if you actually agree with that. Let's take a break. We'll be back. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching AM Live on NTV. We're looking at the state of political parties in the country, and I was getting to Dismas right now because, you know, a number of issues have come up on, you know, the health of our political parties in light of at least what we know from the UDA party, which hopes to be a big, you know, grand political party at least ahead of the 2027 election. Then what happens to these other minor political parties within the coalition as we speak right now, at least in essence, of the Kenya Kwanza? Well,
I think it's important to look at the history of political parties in other parts of the world before coming to Kenya. If you go to the UK and you meet with any person, you ask them, what does Labour stand for? Actually, anybody will tell you what Labour stands for. If you ask them what does the Conservatives stand for, they'll give you an answer. If you go to the US and pose a similar question for Democrats and Conservatives, you will actually get answers because those parties are anchored on a particular ideology and a particular philosophy. Now, the challenge with most political parties in Kenya today, they're not anchored on serious philosophies, but they're rather anchored on personalities. Very powerful personalities who have resources to engage in registration, mobilize people and form political parties. However, it's not a sad story across Africa, because if you go down the road to Tanzania, they've got a political party called CCM that has annual meetings where they agree on party policies. And it's very interesting because I follow Tanzania politics into detail. Wherever the president, the deputy, the vice president or prime minister, wherever they're doing their country tours, the CCM leaders are given preferential treatment. In fact, they are recognized and they're given a speaking opportunity because they are considered to be the custodians of the manifesto. One of their key responsibilities is to ensure that CCM delivers. So they've got a unique opportunity of engaging with members of assembly as well as the national leadership to ensure that their manifestos are respected. In fact, if you want to cause any change in Tanzania, people will tell you, we accept your ideas, but do you want to bring those ideas to CCM? Now, the same situation obtains in South Africa with the African National Congress, whereby you are told that the party has got also regular meetings where they review their white papers, blue papers, whichever terminology they want to use. In fact, if you want to realize that ANC is a strong party, a few days ago, their party leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, was accused of some illegalities, that there was some dollars found at one of his farms. But when the party leadership took a position that when you go to the National Assembly, you're going to vote in this particular manner, that is what they did, irrespective of their individual positions. However, because they've taken the voters for granted, the ANC has started losing its acceptability. And then if you go to Israel, right now, Benjamin Netanyahu, with his coalition of so many political parties, actually, there's been a lot of demonstrations in Israel that Netanyahu is being accused of using his political party to try and suffocate and compromise their judiciary. Because there's a piece of legislation that is introducing, and the ordinary citizens have been in the streets. Then when we come to Kenya, we must give credit to ODM, because it's the longest surviving and active political party. However, because ODM is anchored in the principles of Raila Odinga, it's got a democracy deficit. That his word is as good as law. There are a few members some time ago went to State House and he lost his cool. Never mind that before President Ruto went to Western Kenya, all elected leaders had a cup of coffee with Mr. Raila Odinga, and they agreed on the position. In fact, all the issues from every county were presented to the president on their various governors' letterheads. Now, when these MPs go back to State House, they did not go to State House as ODM members. Rather, they went to State House as members of the National Assembly and Senate to push on the agenda that they had agreed with President Ruto. But because he has adopted, dictatorship within the political party, he felt that these MPs were stepping on his toes. And you've got amazing members on the ODM side. You know, you can talk of MPs like Mark Nyimita of Uriri, a very brilliant person who wants to proactively lobby for his constituency. And you know something interesting is, these MPs went to State House, they have not said they're going to vote against ODM position in the National Assembly or Senate. But you saw what happened to a gentleman called Jalango. He wants to attend a parliamentary group meeting and then is roughened up simply because he wants to push an agenda. So in my view, what we must do today is to make sure that political parties like ODM, the D, which stands for democracy or democratic, actually the parties are democratic. So I was very excited when UDA said they're going to have grassroots elections so that they elect leaders from the grassroots. And the same should happen for ODM and indeed all other political parties in Kenya, so that there is democracy within the political party. Then number two, during the party primaries, we must also have free, fair party primaries. Because these political parties are very strong, if the party primaries are not free, fair, nor credible, or if they approximate what you've been seeing coming from countries in West Africa, then you immediately begin to dilute democracy. Because you will get people going to the National Assembly and Senate who do not represent the will of the people. And finally, for a strong party like UDA, they must make it very, very attractive. And the only way to make a UDA attractive is to ensure that the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto is implemented to the hilt, because that is the only metrics that we are going to judge UDA, ANC, and Ford Kenya, and all the other parties, by looking at the manifesto, because that is what they presented to the Kenyans, and they said, based on this Kenya Kwanza manifesto called the plan, please vote for us, and the people voted for them. So people will be looking at the scoreboard. Now, if the scoreboard is not aligned with the manifesto, then people may start throwing stones. But finally, as Maliba has indicated that Kenya is a young democracy, and we have a very young political parties, that must not be an excuse for having undemocratic tendencies within our political parties. We can embrace best practices immediately. For instance, Kenya came up with the M-Pesa invention. We didn't say, let's wait for us to be 100 years old or 200 years old before coming up with the inventions. We decided to jump the queue, and our political parties in Kenya can jump the queue.
Abdullahi.
First of all, I think the problem we have with the parties is they lack the internal democracy, where people can air their voice. There is mobilization of political support along tribal or regional, lines, using violence and intimidation against, rivals, transporting leaders from one election to another. The oldest party we have is ANC from 1921. We have the Muslim Brotherhood from 1928 in Egypt, South Africa, Mauritania Party 1938, KANU 1944, National Ummah Party in Sudan. Our democracy can only be compared with the ones in Africa because we got independence from the 60s. America is 270 plus old. America, UK is gone. They have gone old. So we're going through a transition through politics, and our democracy is growing. Our systems of political institutions are growing, accountability, transparency, rule of law. I mean, you can't compare the Kenya of today of 1991. Now, I think this is the first country in Africa that has cancelled a presidential election by the Supreme Court. Then there is the second one where it was upheld. 2 times we upheld, and 1 time we went back to election again. Now, we have a country where a sitting president came up with a proposal and it was thrown out, BBI. So our political processes and our constitution, what I call the reformist constitution of 2010, is coming into force, but the people who are implementing it are not up to the standards of saying, let us first uphold the rule of law in this country. So now that we have Malala as the Secretary General for UDA, Malala is going to turn Western into a UDA zone. He has the resources because he's representing the party in power. There are other 9 parties that are having coalition with UDA. They are not. Most of them are going to be consumed. Now, what is going to happen to Wetangula, who is Ford Kenya, and Musalia Mudavadi, ANC? What can they do to rattle or fight the entrance of UDA into Western? Nothing much, because both of them are in government, state, or public officers. Do they have men with zeal and counter Malala? And so he has already fixed them. What is Ruto trying to do is he's playing the politics of checkmate. He has given these ones jobs, but he's taking the biggest man from ANC, putting him in Western now. How is that going to augur well between him and Musalia Mudavadi now? What can Musalia do? I mean, he has a job, his wife has a job. Is he bold enough to say today, this is not the way we agreed? And so this, as URP and TNA have formed Jubilee, and Jubilee is just, a shelf of its former self. I think in the next 2-3 years, Malala will be getting, very conversant and comfortable in Western Kenya, and he's going to be making entourages, working with other UDA leaders. The speaker in the Senate is from Kilifi. We have Aisha Juma from Kilifi. We have cabinet secretaries from Coast Kenya. We have those from Northern Kenya. I mean, Aden, the former cabinet secretary for trade from Mandera, a former Barclays, is now in the economic recovery. A lot of things are going. UDA should form its coalition on everything, but above all, as my friend has said, they must deliver on the manifesto so that before they tell us about 2027, we ask them, what did you do in the last 5 years first? Yeah.
All right. Arnold, yes, you know, the Daily Nation actually mentioned something you picked up on, which was on so the leaders of these parties in the ruling coalition, including the Prime Minister, Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi and Speaker Moses Wetangula, who will be among the casualties of President Ruto's plan to forge a strong party ahead of the election. So this is sort of freeze the president from any of the agreement that they made during the election. Do you foresee that?
Actually, as I pick up on that, I just need to say this, that Malala is not going to turn Western into UDA. If there is anything about President William Ruto, I think he's a New Testament Christian. For Christians here, they'll tell you that the New Testament simply ensured that there is no link, or rather there is no middleman, there is no on your behalf. When Jesus shows up, is that particular pasia at the temple was actually torn during Pentecost, and that since then anyone can approach the throne, the Holy of Holies, on their own. If you see what William did in Central, is that he endeared to the people himself. He didn't want any middleman. And the truth is that the votes that William got in Central Kenya were not given to him because he had Rigathi Gachagua. Even if he had Ndindi Nyoro or any other person, he would still have gotten those particular votes because he endeared himself to the people directly. The people related to him.
But you must
what
agree
he's
that
now doing,
by the fact that, you know, he was with, you know, the other political leaders within that region who have a lot of some extent
you
of
see,
influence.
if you look, you see, that is
Yeah.
ideally what has been happening. But William Ruto does not believe in politics of agency, where somebody else has to be your agent and you have to go there. If what he did in Central is anything to go by, and knowing the dynamics and the characteristics of the Central Kenya vote block, he went there directly. All the others were for purposes of just icing on the cake. What he's actually doing in Western Kenya, being a substantive vote block, is that he's also doing away with the middlemen. He wants to go directly to the people. And how does he do that? He's picked up a man who then will ensure, because like I said, Malala is young and restless, he's ambitious, he wants to go up. He will take up this particular responsibility and run up to ensure that he equalizes. Because at the moment, you know, Malala might not have a party, he might not be a party leader, but being the SG of the ruling party, and that the party leaders from that particular region, the two of them of note, that is Wetangula and Davadi, are now tied up being state officers, is that Malala is at their level. So what is he doing? He's leveling the ground so that then when William comes in, he can get anything from Western on his own accord and not having to go through Davadi and not having to go through Wetangula. But I need to say this. I saw the two friends here actually mentioned CCM and ANC. You know, let us not confuse government and political parties. Let us not confuse those two things. ANC and CCM are not political parties. Those are governments that succeed themselves, and sometimes they allow political parties to compete with them. Those two parties, or rather those two outfits, cannot fit the description of a political party.
Why not?
They
because
are government. Actually,
they're essentially governed within the same structures that other political parties are.
like, in governed. Practice, ANC in South Africa and CCM in Tanzania are in practice not political parties. They are just governments that succeed themselves, and sometimes they allow political parties to try and do games with them. Those are not, at least the way they are run and how they are intertwined with state. You know, government is an agent of state. Among the four forms of, when you're talking about state, you'll talk about territory, you'll talk about population, you'll talk about sovereignty, you'll talk about government. As a government, as a component of state. That is exactly what those two outfits have done. They have actually become components of state in a way that it's almost, you cannot separate the two. So, whereas they allow small parties, or rather some outfits that are properly political parties to compete with them, but they are not on the same level. Those are actually governments that just allow political parties to play with them and then organize. Of course, in South Africa, ANC is losing ground because over time now political parties have eaten into it, but it's still by and large not a political party per se in the way a political party will work on that particular end. It's a government that is just succeeding itself.
All right, Dismas.
Well, number one, President Ruto is grassroots politicians, and he has no time for middlemen or the so-called political brokers. So he goes and meets with his voters directly. And the entry of Malala in Western Kenya, the idea that Malala is going to frustrate ANC as well as Ford Kenya, I think that is far-fetched. What is likely to happen in Western Kenya is that the political space is going to be extremely competitive, and then people in that part of the world are going to have choices. And in my view, what political parties in Kenya must do is identify top talent and ensure that the top talent has been given resources to market the political parties. So it's a bit of extreme thinking to imagine that when one political party is going up, that the consequence or the automatic outcome is the others are collapsing. I think all the political parties will move up. Now, talking about these political parties in Tanzania and South Africa, ANC at some stage was the only political party in South Africa, was the political party to beat. But in other provinces today, ANC does not control those provincial governments. And in fact, ANC has to enter some sort of mergers, or to use the Kenyan terminology, handshake with other political parties. And even their absolute win, at some stage they were eating up to 70%, but now it's been declining slowly. Even in Tanzania, the new president has accepted that political parties need to be given more space to operate in, and she has indicated that freedom of association, freedom of assembly is going to be given prime attention. But at the end of the day, we must ask ourselves the question, and that is the elephant in the room. Whose interests do these political parties serve? And does Mora have a capacity to penalize political parties that do not serve her selfish interest? That should be the elephant in the room. Like, for instance, can you look at the Kenya Kwanza manifesto in 5 years and draw a matrix and find out how did they deliver? Now, if they have not delivered, does the Kenyan voter have capacity to punish the political party? And if they have delivered, does the Kenyan voter have capacity to reward the political party? In my view, I think that's what we should be striving for. That when we're electing political parties to office, we must ensure that they respect the covenant. And if they do not, then we punish them. And then we should also encourage the political party leaders actually to anchor their political parties on a certain philosophy. So that if you look at ODM, you know what ODM stands for. If you look at ANC, you know what ANC stands for. If you look at UDA, you are able to establish what they stand for. Part of the reason why political parties in Kenya keep on collapsing every 5 and 10 years is because essentially they're just no more than special purpose vehicles for the political leaders. Jubilee was very strong for 10 years. It collapsed with the exit of President Kenyatta. KANU was very strong for a long time, but with the exit of President Moi, Kenya, all these political parties. Because our tragedy is that these political party heads, they do not allow democracy to thrive within the political party. Like, for instance, how come the oldest political party in Kenya now, forget about KANU, ODM, has not had party primaries, so that the members of ODM can actually elect the party leaders. And then I'm also making an assumption that in fact these political parties have got members. I'm not sure whether they really have members, whether if you go to Kimathi Street right now, out of 100 people, you tell them, can I see your political party membership? Whether somebody actually can produce a KANU card, a UDA card, an ANC card. People just associate with political parties.
Do people really understand the essence of, you know, being, whether loyal or being members of a political party? If today ODM or, you know, Azimio in that matter calls for, you know, a rally, you will see, you know, Kenyans going there donning, you know, orange shirts or blue shirts. If UDA calls for meeting, will remove that shirt, wear yellow shirt, you know, be part of that rally. So basically there is a problem. That what you're saying.
Yeah. Towards the election last year, there's an international journalist who actually followed a couple of active party supporters, and they had all these branded shirts in their rucksacks. So there's a UDA meeting at Nyayo Stadium. They don the yellow colors. There's an ODM, because you see a number of these guys again are paid. They actually confessed that there's some allowances that are.
So sadly, we do lack, you know, issue-based issue-based ideas within our political parties. Then,
first, I think the parties only come to existence during elections, because we have the Political Party Registrar Act, and we have an office, we have IEBC, we have the Constitution. But now, if you look at what my brother said, even in Mandara, it's the same. Ladies or men will have the upper cover, go to this, go to that, have the eyes closed, and then pick some money.
Do we need legislation to addressing
some things are just
addressing
some things
strengthening the structures within the
political hygiene cannot be addressed by legalities.
And there's
you don't control. You cannot legalize emotions.
Right.
You cannot legalize manners. You cannot legalize or control behavior. So the parties, as my colleagues have said, they are as good as the leader in the region they represent and the cycle of the election. Because right now, what has happened between 2017 and 2022 about political parties? They come to existence in the mushroom around, you see the branding and everything, maybe a year to election, 6 months to election. Now the election is over, almost 6-7 months. I mean, what has happened to political parties? So it was a tool that, then the other thing is that, as my brother said, the accountability issue to the citizen. There is a lot of money paid to these political parties, both by the national coffers and individual contributions. We don't know how this money is used, because we'll hear 2 billion, 3 million going to these parties. What is the role of the citizens in oversighting that amount of money? Because they are members in terms of list in a computer, but not necessarily being consulted. And there is not even a framework for that.
All right. Arnold, we have to wind up, so I'm just going to give you a few seconds, really just seconds.
Please also give me 30 seconds.
We have to really close the show, but okay, not more than 30 seconds. So I'll give Arnold.
I think we must all agree that political parties, at least from where we are, will remain special purpose vehicles for purposes of negotiating or winning elections.
In Kenya.
In Kenya for the longest time. And there is the bad manners that actually comes with being a politician in Kenya, that no one really wants to actually grow a political party. All that people want nowadays is that you form a political party, participate in elections, and even if you lose, quote unquote, no one wants to be outside of government. It's a very, very big problem. As of Malala, I think it's important to say this, that Mudavadi did not consider Malala important, or he wasn't so keen on ensuring that he, as a coach, he would play him in important roles. Malala has been out here roaming for the last 6 months. He lost an election. Mudavadi was forming government. He never had him as a priority, knowing too well that Malala is an asset. Somebody else has taken him up, and you know that there is discomfort from where Mudavadi comes from. Western Kenya being the way it's fragmented.
But we have not really heard of any discomfort coming
there is. You are seated in the studio, and I come from Western. I can tell you that there is discomfort. But I needed to finish this. I heard him say that Sifuna comes from Kakamega, Malala comes from Kakamega, even though Sifuna comes from Bungoma.
30 seconds.
It's important to actually say this, that if you want a good Secretary General for a political party or any organization, the only place you can get them is in the far west. You need to look at Kakamega, look at Bungoma.
Why?
As in all Secretary Generals, all Secretary Generals of North.
It's a very interesting opinion. I don't know why that's
very debatable.
Maliba has gone to ethnic nationalism.
We
shall not entertain in a national station. No, I must point out, the new board at Kenya Power must look at management that wants clients to pay bills in Forex. In US dollars. Is this a statement of their confidence or no confidence in the Kenyan shilling? So in my view, the new board must kick somebody.
All right, thank you. Dismas Moko, political risk analyst, Abdullahi Alas, governance policy analyst, and Arnold Maliba, public policy expert. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. Ishmael Nyaribo, lawyer, political analyst, could not join us this morning, but we've had a good discussion here, and I think there's still so much more we need to cover with regard to this particular matter. But thank you for coming in. The hashtag to use, as always, is MLiveNTV. My name is Zainab Ismail. You have yourself a good morning and good day. Your world is coming up shortly. Stay with us.